Hello everyone, this is Daniel, and I have something to say about the world basically falling apart and falling into place. Well, what I mean is, maybe you should listen to the people around you and what they're talking about. Or just look at the news. Man, things are not as good as they could be or should be, but they're as good as they will be. So, what's going on? Well, there's a lot of people going to jail, and then a lot of people that are getting violent. You know what I mean, right? People fighting the police, people getting 7 years, and all that crazy stuff. I mean, if you go to the bar, you're bound to actually hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, this person went to jail for this, and we have to get custody over this person." And another person in a fair or a park or maybe a not a park, but a fair or a theme park. Well, those people will say, "Oh, these people have gone wild crazy and they have to go to jail with a bracelet, or they fought against the police or tried to shoot someone." Things like that. And you also hear of witchcraft that is in broad daylight in a theme park. So if you're wondering, well, how is this even relating to the end times, and how is this relating to the fact that we're getting close to the rapture? Well, we're getting really close to the end times, really, because things are looking bad, aren't they? Well, for some of you, things are looking bad, but some of you, other people, are like, I don't know. It's like it all looks the same to me. All right, look on the news. You'll hear of BLM, gay parades, and all that, and the whole world becoming gay except for a third of it. You know what I mean, right? And China and like the Middle Eastern country not going gay. Things like even African countries and even Russia, even almost all of Europe, even Ukraine, even almost all of South America, and even all of America. Those countries are going gay. Not only that, Australia's going gay, New Zealand's going gay. So 2/3 of the whole world is going gay. All except for the Middle Eastern countries, like Iran and Iraq and United Arab Emirates. And even China is not going gay, but the rest of the whole world is going gay. So why is that a thing? Why is even Japan going gay? Let me tell you something. The whole world lingers after death. The whole world lingers after evil, and they want everyone else to be evil and go to hell. On the other hand, the whole world's getting worse, isn't it? And let me just talk about criminal behavior. People in America have accepted criminal behavior as norm. Like ever since 2015, they've accepted criminal behavior as norm. Ever since Barack Obama, and ever since then, people have become gay and violent, like Sodom and Gomorrah. And then there's also the fact that, well, there's also all kinds of schemes and all kinds of perversion, lying, and false witness. It's all like that. And you think, oh, some of the sins are just no big deal. Well, sin is a sin. It's all a big deal. And, too bad that the porn has gone over through the roof, and at some point it's gotten so bad that it's gone to two extremes, and then people are going to, left and right, are going to, let's just say, death for sex, And I'm not going to go into any details, but you can look it up if you want, but it's not anything I'd recommend, There's death, there's suicide, as even a sexual thing. That's suicide, like suicide for death. That's suicide for sex, that's crazy. And then there's frequent problems with new types of sex and people getting old, like people getting not used to. What am I trying to say? People are basically the other type of sex has gone to also, they've gone to a new type of sex, and things like that. The world is waxing worse. So sex, violence, and theft. So those are all the worst crimes. Like burglary is an extreme one. Like especially violence. Well, there's murder, and murder's on like a complete rise. And the people that are involved with mass murder, there has been like double the amount of mass murders for every day. So if there's like 365 days a year, that would mean that there's like 730 mass murders a year, and that'll be 2 times every day. Did you get my point? And you're wondering, oh, that's only hysterical, right? It is happening today. Let me tell you something about mass murder back in the 80s and 60s. The only thing that you heard of was once per year. Especially in the 70s where there was a bad mass murder. And it was just a few people that died, but it was there nonetheless. I think it's all started since 1999 with Columbine High School. And then there's 9/11, and then things have gotten worse since then. There were these big, like earth-shattering disasters like Columbine and 9/11. But then all the elevator got worse, and they're no longer earth-shattering. Hurricane Katrina was one of the last things that happened to be earth-shattering, and then all that is no longer the case because it's only going to get worse, right? Let me tell you something. Ukraine, that war in Ukraine is like 9/11 all over the place. It really is. And that's what Russia's doing to Ukraine. 9/11 all over the place. That's how evil Putin really is. And after this, there's going to be 9/11s all day, all over the world. Some by God, that is putting his wrath against the sinners and trying to get rid of sin. Mostly by the devil, and mostly by the people who are evil. Like the Antichrist is going to be the main culprit, but then in there God's going to turn this earth into hell. I'm sorry because I'm seeking the truth here. God's going to turn this earth into hell. And the people that forget God, it's going to turn into hell. So, what else do we have today? Well, we have a lot. Not to mention technology. Why is technology so bad? Well, Daniel spoke about it in I think the 9th chapter or the end chapter. But I think it was like the end chapter. Basically, people will run to and fro, and then knowledge shall increase. What does that mean? It was vague on that part, but then people know about it today that knowledge is increasing. Computers have made knowledge increase. And, even Paul had visions of the future for today, and the future of today, and how he saw, all these weird imaginations he saw like modern technology and tanks, and that a 200 million demonic Chinese army, I mean Chinese for a reason, and those people are going to be Chinese obviously and Asian, and unfortunately these people are going to invade the rest of the world because they're going to try to own all the world instead of the Antichrist. You know what's going to happen? Basically, it's going to go down to half the world population from today, or from the future, from when the tribulation starts. It could be like 4 billion people in the future, or it could be 4.5 billion. But it's going to be half the world population in the future, because that's what we have with tanks, machine guns, and all that. And these people are going to ride on horseback, which is basically Paul's wording, meaning he doesn't know what this technology is, so he says horseback, and with all these fine armor and all over the place. You know what I mean, right? Not to mention, if someone had a vision of the future and they didn't have technology at all, what would they say that this great weird stuff really is? Like, they had no idea what a tank is or a car. They had no idea what even a factory was, so screw to that. They had no idea what a train was or a steam engine. All they had was, well, they had a furnace, but it was just a flame in a metal container. All they had to do was just open a door and put, wood in a fire, and it was a metal container to actually burn whatever is in it. Like, I don't think they even had coal. They had wood, and they had gas, and that gas furnace would burn whatever's in it, and it had pipes to go to the water, and that's all. The only heating they had was a gas, like some sort of gas they had that was like underground, and they didn't even have gas. They just had some sort of oil. They only had oil, and they burned the furnace with the oil and wood, and they heat things up, and that's how they got the nice warm pool. I read from a child's book, but I know what that's all about. And he saw things automatically running like horses. Like, how does a machine go by itself and blow fire at people and from a great distance kill them? Well, John couldn't describe it. He didn't know what it was all about. All he knew was that it was breathing fire at people and it killed them. So at a great distance, so people died from a great distance. It's like, so let's say 200 million times, well, let's say, let's do, 2 billion and 200 million. That's 10 people for each tank. So yeah, a 200 million army would easily, definitely easily kill 2 billion people. Easily. Not a question in my mind would that be easy for them to kill them. So, with spare of that, they'll gather around Europe, and even South America's gone. Well, they'll gather around Europe and all of the other nations and just wipe out the population wherever they dislike it all. I believe that'll be like the Antichrist nation that really is against China. And they're butting heads, so China takes over that part, and the Antichrist takes over the whole world, but then there's a nation that's no longer, and they're butting heads with the Antichrist. And I believe, by that many people in that one country, I believe that's how many of them become saved, is because they reject the Antichrist because they don't like it. They don't like him. So anyway, I spoke enough. But remember, today is so bad, and there's a lot of technology that is involved. Anyway, let me get to the last points. Have you heard of music in the 50s? That was the start of perverse music. So, well, there was perverse music all the days except for the 1800s. Well, there was in the 1920s racism, and that was just mockery of color. That's just all it was. People didn't think it was a big deal, actually. And some people did, but then there was not much that really did. Then in the 50s, it was so bad that Elvis was shaking his hips, and people thought it was so horrible that he was shaking his hips, and women were fainting because of him fainting, and they just loved him to death. It was almost all young women, and the guys would just scream like women. It was everyone just screaming like wild crazy. that was actually the first time that people started screaming in a wild crowd, and people heard it all over the place, and people were wild for Elvis. And none of the parents liked it. Matter of fact, they hated it so much that they dragged all these like 16-year-olds and 50-year-olds and even 20-year-olds out of the stadium. Then some people went to the Beatles, and people started doing the same thing with the Beatles and other rock and roll bands. Then started going to pop, and people started screaming and going wild for that too. In the 70s, some of the people got wild crazy for the rock bands. In the 80s, it was Michael Jackson that people were going wild crazy for, and it was actually absolutely crazy. Now we have it. Now everyone's gotten used to a wild screaming band. And what were the lyrics back then in the 50s? It's all about, well, with Elvis, he started with, like a hound dog or something like that, you know. And he was just singing just random lyrics, and then some other people were singing like a Robin or something like that, you know. Some of it was mildly suggestive, but it was just mild compared to today. There was no language, nothing like swearing until 1972. Then there was like mild, like I would say late 60s. It was starting to get a little out of hand. In the 60s, I mean, all the elderly people would understand what was going on. In the 60s, there was people like, you know, singing songs that were all about the devil. They would mock. There was like the devil around you, you know. But then there was 70s. They were going after the government in the 60s and 70s, and then there was 80s. 80s was all about, oh, tough it up, guys, and fight. And there's also ladies that were like, oh, ain't nothing like a girl having fun and having the best time of her life. Then we had like metal that was all about murdering guys, you know, like murdering guys. That's like in the 80s. Then in the 90s, it got out of hand. Like F-bombs were everywhere. Like, have you heard of NWA? I don't think maybe you have. Some of you have. But NWA is like, they've gone to so extreme that they've gone banned in some places, I believe. And they didn't last long. And then that's how rap went downhill. That was 90s. And remember, back in the 90s, they didn't have mass shootings like that in that time. 2000s. Then things got calmer in the 2000s, but then some people were still singing about, oh, my milkshake, shake it, shake it, shake it, you know. That was just considered crude back then, but regular today. It bothers me to just talk about these things, you know. And then, let's skip to 2013, where Anaconda was a snake thing, like a man's wiener. Anaconda. Then things got worse. Some of the people were singing with F-bombs in regular songs all over the place, but that's just not that bad. But then there's also songs where people are getting greedy and all kinds of money is going everywhere. Today we have people singing about the mark of the beast. Oh, and it's getting worse. People singing about prostitutes and porn. Even like racist slurs were bad in the 2000s, but then there's also people singing about prostitutes, money, gun violence, and many people are getting like stage controversies and all that. Even though Elvis started his first one in jail time, in his jailhouse rock, you know. I mean, it's really horrible what's going on right now. Don't get me wrong. But soon you'll hear songs singing all about, oh, if you turn into an animal. Actually, what they're singing about now is all about gay. Like, you can be gay as much as you want. I mean, some of them were joking about gay, but now they're saying it's seriously. They want to talk about. They're serious about wanting to be gay, and people just wish to be gay. And there's people that are singing about being animals. There's gonna be a time when songs are gonna talk about, oh, let's be nude. Let's all be nude. And that's gonna be a time. That's coming soon. I don't want to see that. I don't talk about that. It's gonna be horrible. And then there's songs talking about the female genitalia all the way through. Like they're gonna talk about, oh, let's look at that part. And then people are gonna say, let's turn into a dog. Let's turn into a horse. Let's turn into. I wish we could turn into dragons. I wish we could turn into dinosaurs or something like that. It's gonna get that bad, actually, guys. And it's coming out as fast, like abrupt, and it's coming out as fast, and it's coming out as fierce, and it's coming out as with an attitude. Not to mention, it's only getting worse. Now the Rapture, you might think, oh hey, the Rapture is coming in soon after this. Some of you think, oh, it's not going to come. For those that are thinking it's not going to come, well, okay. If it comes now, then you're going to be glad you didn't see that future where everyone gets naked. Because everyone's going to get STDs everywhere. I can guarantee you that. And in the, if it's not now, then in the future, then I can definitely see why war and famine all over the world is going to be a thing. Because if it's not soon, it's going to be within a couple of years or more, then what we have on our plate is a start of famine. It's all over the world, even America. America being annihilated right before the Rapture starts. And all at once, boom. A quarter of the whole population has died. So anyway, I know I talked about it a little too much for some of you, but remember, if you talk to an elderly person, like especially in their 60s, about what it was like back in their childhood, especially in their teens and like early adulthood, like when they were young, they'll tell you it wasn't as bad at all. It was a lot better than it was a lot better in the past than it was today. A lot of the elderly people will say, "Oh, it's not." It's all of them actually would say it's not as bad as it was. I mean, it's not as bad as today. It's not as bad as it was then than it is today, because they all say, "I wish we could go in the past because it was a lot better in the past." Well, anyway, today we have so many issues. Like, if you talk to a lot of people about what they're, if they know of anyone that went to prison that got sick, it's another thing. If you talk to a person that got in their family who got sick, you'll remember that a lot of the people are sick, but then there's a lot of people that are in prison because, well, it's normal for a family to have at least a few people in prison, but it wasn't at all normal for a family to have at least one person in prison in the 70s, even though there was lots of mercury and especially a lot of lead. Even then, well, if they don't say, "Oh, today's not as bad as it was back then," and back then it was not as bad as it is today, we're only quoting from the Old Testament, where in the future is going to get better with Jesus. However, even if nothing is new under the sun, remember, the biblical days in the BC times, before Christ, in the Old Testament times, those days were actually always the same, except for times that were worse. And they were worse. And then Jesus was the best. And today is then. In the future, it's going to get the worst that ever is going to be. The worst. I mean, back then you could only count on the future. But today you can only count on the past. And remember, if you only have the past to remember, and everyone says, oh, we only have the past to remember, just remember what they're saying. They're seeing that the world's coming to an end, and they're freaking out about it, especially everyone with the Bible. For some people, it takes more faith to not to believe in anything about God than to believe in God. It takes more faith. Really, why? Because they have too much faith to begin with, and their faith is really in themselves, and they've cheated on God, cheated on their faith. Why do they have more faith again? Because their faith was really in vain, and they knew how to cheat on God and just say, I don't believe in anything, even though they knew how to believe in God. So my salvation message right now is, this is a salvation message right now. Accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, because He is your Master. If you say, Jesus, I accept You as my Lord and Savior, my Master, Jesus, you'll forever be saved. But don't say it by my sake. Don't say it don't say it the when I say it. Say it in your heart, with a believing heart, that Jesus is your Master. Because that's salvation right there, okay? Alright, I'll be done now, okay?